Well, what's wrong with that? For example, everyone has almost agreed that Shakespeare as we know him did not exist. Or rather, it was a completely different person or, in general, some kind of collective image or group of authors. But whose portraits do you think these are? Who were these people? But this is the same person, perhaps the most famous navigator and traveler, Christopher Columbus. The brighter a person's mark on history is, the more secrets and legends they become, but Columbus will give many a head start here too. Did Columbus even exist? Paintings by artists vary greatly even in the appearance of the Spaniard. In some places he is overweight, in others he is shaven and thin, and in others he is bearded, blonde or grey-haired. There has long been controversy over the exact date and even place of birth of the future conqueror of America. In Italy itself, a dozen cities are pursuing the right to be considered the birthplace of Columbus. Historians generally believe that Christopher was born into the modest family of Domenico and Susanna Colombo. However, Christopher's youngest son, Hernando, who published his father's biographies at the end of the 16th century, refutes this fact and considers his father a descendant of an ancient Roman family. There is not a single lifetime portrait. Can you imagine? Spain, which is not poor in artists, including courtiers, for example Juan de Flandes, did not consider it necessary to capture the man who forged the glory of the Spanish royal court for more than 20 years. This was under the patronage of Columbus from Isabella of Castile, whose portraits have reached us in sufficient quantities. Here is one of the few descriptions of what Christopher looked like that Wikipedia gives us. Columbus's appearance is known from portraits that were painted after his death. Bartholomé de las Casas, who saw Columbus in 1493, describes him as follows: he was tall, above average, had a long and respectable face, an aquiline nose, bluish-grey eyes, white skin, with redness, a beard and mustache. In his youth they were reddish, but they turned grey in their labours. The description matches the later portraits exactly, doesn't it? More to come. Christopher made 4 grand voyages to America. However, to date, not a single ship's log has survived, and there should have been at least 4 of them only from flagship ships, nor the personal diary of the navigator, which supposedly existed. How is this possible? According to the principle existing before 1500, the right to territory arose according to the principle of discovery. Accordingly, the ship's logs were the only documents confirming this right. But there are none. The only known documents that have survived to this day are later lists made by the Spanish priest Bartolomé de las Casas, by the way, an ardent opponent of colonization and violence against the indigenous people of both Americas. And it's all. The alleged contemporary drawing of Columbus, as published in the Scientific American in 1893. Moreover, the continents discovered by Columbus, due to a misunderstanding, were named after Amerigo Vespucci, who did not discover anything at all in his life, but was only a cartographer and a helmsman on ships. He had a personal acquaintance with Columbus and even patronage on his part, but there is no evidence of his participation in Columbus's expeditions. Christopher died, as is usual, in poverty and disgrace. But even this was not the end of his adventures. According to evidence, the coffin with his remains crossed the Atlantic Ocean more than once. For what? To date, the exact burial place has not been established for certain. Not long ago there was an attempt to conduct a genetic analysis of the remains in one of the supposed burial places, which showed that the remains belonged to a fragile 40-45-year-old man. Perhaps the remains of the great traveler are lost to us forever.